So JD here today with Lena, my co-host, and we're going to be talking about quite a few topics today, right? So the ubiquity of medical testing and what you can see personally without talking to a doctor, right? Maybe there's some downsides to that. Okay, so an alternative to stimulants, right? So there are like alternatives aside from stimulants to treating ADHD. Who would have thought, right? Sound therapy. And then the last one is like what CEOs are doing and prioritizing now. And it's not yachts and it's not watches, it's not fine cars, and super interesting. So Lena, what do you want to start? What do you think is most interesting?
Yeah, let's check out those medical test results.
Yeah. And so what Lena was referring to is a Times article, and we'll quickly share a screen here. And really what was interesting about this was the fact that there are so many tests available today. And a lot of people today can get the results really super fast. They can get so many types of different basic results and types of testing, and they can get access to it. But I think there's one challenge here, Lena. Yeah. And sometimes they get the results back before they have the doctor talking to them, and they get the results back without an advisor in the room.
Well, I found it super fascinating for a lot of reasons, and I'm really excited to dive into both sides of this. But my first immediate reaction was, this is great. Like, I think getting results immediately is super important because I know from personal experience as well, waiting weeks and weeks for like even a simple MRI exam result is super frustrating, especially if you're an athlete or you need to use your body, you know? I do see that it is quite dangerous for life-threatening results because people may not be able to process the information in such a way. And I think the intent to try to fix a system that's not equal by adding this so that way everyone's on the same page, no matter who you look like, no matter where you're from, was great. And I really do celebrate that. However, it obviously needs edits. And I think investigating what those would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you get a screening back, a biopsy, or you get a result back of perhaps your kid, the lady's pregnant or something, and it's not the most positive, like sometimes those results aren't actually 100%. And I say this to illustrate a point. I had a recent test by Galleri called the cancer screening test, and it said I had an elevated measure of a certain cancer, lung cancer in my family. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm totally screwed, right? Because I didn't talk to a physician. As soon as I got the result on my phone, I was in the middle of lunch with one of my friends, and I was just like, whoa, right? It's like, yeah. And in that moment, I thought to myself, I'm so screwed, right? But I think getting feedback like that was cool in the sense that, hey, look, I can understand what my risks are. But at the same time, what are the downsides of so many tests out there that people can get without the right guidance and the right advisor, like walking you through? I felt like if I talked to a genetic counselor or a physician that was in the room with me at that point, they'd be like, hey, this is a spectrum. This is what the data says. This is 5% of people are at risk. You're slightly elevated. Don't worry about it. Don't smoke. Or, if I had that guidance, maybe I would have been, a little happier. By and large, having these tests, as I think about it, like in anything, in terms of improvements, right? There's like the way I view the mental model is to improve a product, to improve a company, to improve a business line or whatever, or improve your life. You can do three things, right? So it's more, better, and new, right? And sometimes focusing on the more is not the best, especially when it comes to this. Like there was just a wide variety of tests that people can just order today, right? You can do genetic testing, you can do blood testing, you can do diagnostics, right? And sometimes it's not the best, right? Given the fact that you need to kind of have somebody there. And I think that right now there's just like this age of infinite distraction, information overload. And Absolutely. So there's definitely different ways to do it, but I think I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic that the new cutting edge tests are there. And I just hope that the more and the better functions are kind of dialed in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And like something really cool about the article was that a positive side of people becoming like Googlers and like, all right, so I have this cough. Like, what does that mean? What does that need to do? I think something really cool about that is they said they were more prepared for their follow-up appointments because they were able to Google their diagnosis or Google certain lab results. And then that made it so they could take advantage of the time they had with the doctor in the actual appointment. And I thought that was really cool because doctors are, depending on who you go to, sometimes they're like in and out and you're like, wait, I didn't even have time to process what just happened. I didn't have time to ask questions. And now I have to make another appointment because you're booked out for like 3 more months. So I think like in that way, it's super beneficial. However, if you are going to, Mayo Clinic and you're going to all these like random Googling sites and you're like, Reddit. What do I have? Then yeah, obviously it's not good because I didn't study medicine, right? So like, I don't don't need to be diagnosing myself. We shouldn't misinterpret our roles with this information, but that's hard. And like you were saying, I feel like with this bill, we should kind of see it as an experiment. Okay, look at the results and then go back and make a new hypothesis, or go back and stage like a new kind of experiment here, but keeping the same results and not adapting to our newfound information about like what you were saying. More may not always be better. Then it's like, cool, that's fair. Like, we're humans, we're not perfect. We're not going to get it right the first time. Let's go back and make those needed adjustments.
Yeah. And I think the article kind of ended on a positive note about, or not so positive note about, the Apple Watch and the anxiety and the constant dings and pings with like your Aura ring and your Whoop band and all the data that's out there, which is both good and bad. I think the Aura ring, for me personally, I'm a huge, longevity nerd. And so like that helped me out with like getting to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, deep sleep, REM sleep, and the like. And it's just like that consistency is so important, right? So the consistency is awesome. The challenge is like, sometimes when you just over check it and over index it and you kind of don't zoom out, you can be like, wow, my readiness score, for example, in the Aura, it's like 60. I'm going to have a terrible day. And like, you don't want to reframe your day based on what the data says, right? Yes. And so you kind of don't want to have that Pavlovian response, from like, for example, those Apple Watch indicators. Sometimes your Apple Watch, I have an Apple Watch, and it just alerts me. It's like your heart rate is elevated. And you're just like, okay, what's going on? And too many of those notifications can really get you. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And like, I think I'm cautiously optimistic, like anything. And, I think that was kind of neat that they were talking about just the developments, but also that leads to like the next one, which was the point that you brought up about the brown noise article. That was really interesting. And so what was your thought about that one? The ADHD therapeutic alternative that with brown noise, right?
Yeah, actually, I didn't even notice that there were like different colors of noise before. So I was being very educated now that I was like reading this article, and I was like, actually, I love brown noise. Like, I love listening to rain. That is so relaxing. And they talk about like how there's positive and negative ions and things like that, and listening to like falling water and stuff like that actually does reduce your stress levels. And I don't know, I think like in this day and age where like Western medicine, at least in our culture, is so prevalent, it's really cool to kind of find alternative ways, like also what you were saying, and that maybe trying something to help us that doesn't have to do with taking a pill, you know what I mean? So I don't know, I really liked what you were saying about that as well. What was that point again about?
Yeah, it's like, we just have this instant gratification, I guess, fix that's going on. There's so many movements right now going on, and a pill is like just an example of that. Just to get a pill, get a reaction, and then that's it, right? The challenge with that is with ADHD, for example, some of the medications, and I'm not saying this as a physician, for example, but some of the medications are habit forming, and they're kind of like they're amphetamines, right? For lack of better derivatives of that, right? Not exactly, but the thing is that just prescribing stimulants nonstop, right? And not thinking about the games, like there's an ADHD game that's going out that's going to be released for kids, or like noise, right? Sometimes, like for me personally, I'm a huge productivity nerd, and so I'm obsessed with something called Brain FM. And this app, I just put it on, crank out, my headphones, obviously, and just listen to it, and it just helps me focus. And I'm not entirely sure if it's brown noise or it's violet noise, but it's some sort of color of noise, and it definitely helps, right? And so I don't have an addiction to it, but I can say I use it 5 out of like 7 days of the week, right? And so, yeah, maybe I am addicted to it. But I think what was really cool about the article was noise can be a form of therapy, calming people, relaxing people, for amping up your energy, for helping you focus. There are so many different functions and so many different benefits from noise therapy. That was really fascinating for me.
Yeah, kind of almost like music therapy too. It's like I've heard of music therapy, but I never heard of like that separate section, noise therapy, as well. And like, even if it is a placebo effect, I loved that they ended the article with a quote about like, if you find your happy place, if you're calm, it doesn't matter like how you got there, just like bask in it. You know what I mean? There's no need for someone else to be like, oh, that like wasn't true and it's a placebo and yada, yada, yada. But if someone else is at peace with this noise, if it's actually working for them, let it work for them. And I really liked that. Like, that was really cool, because they were saying it's still kind of developing. It's not like a strict science, but it's cool. And it's also like affordable, right? It's way more affordable than getting some drugs from the pharmacy.
Or getting addicted to something. And I mean, there are worse addictions you could have to like than noise, right? Yes, you can be addicted to Taylor Swift or for example, or some sort of musician, right? That people are obsessed with. But I think, this is really interesting that it is kind of coming up to, just the public conscious, right? And so typically when the Times or the WSJ, like Wall Street Journal, has this, it means like they're kind of lagging, right? Because people are already just doing it right now. And I think that's really interesting that there's a possibility of alternatives for ADHD treatment and so forth, alternatives beyond just the typical, hey, here's your med, see you later type deal, right?
Absolutely.
That was kind of interesting. And, I think overall though, this need to get away, what is your thought about the instant gratification fix like that? That's just like prevalent, right? People want to become famous overnight.
Yeah.
It's like, they want to be Instagram famous or Facebook famous or on TikTok. Like, what's your reaction to that?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, yes, I struggle with that. Like, definitely identify. I think also the instant gratification part goes with, and this is where I am like in my journey, is I need to focus more, and I'm getting better on it, but I need to focus more on the process and not the product, or like the journey, not the destination, because I feel like instant gratification is all about the destination. Like, I don't really care how I get there. Just like, I want to get there and I want to get there now. And it's like, okay, but when you get there, you're still going to want something else, right? It's not like the end of the road. So I like the idea of removing this kind of perfectionism that I think also kind of comes with my instant gratification, and letting myself learn, make these mistakes, learn from them, keep going one foot in front of the other, and just enjoy that aspect of life. Like, I still want to live. And I think instant gratification just, I don't know, dulls it or takes it away. Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, it's like I view life like a bunch of W's, wins, and losses, right? And I think life really, for me, and what's really worked for me is it's not what happens to you, but it's what your reaction is to what happens to you, right? And so when you get an L, everyone can get W's and like they can be fine, right? But really, like, what happens and your success is rooted in how well you handle those L's and how well you pivot. Mm-hmm. And just kind of thinking about people that have already made it across their journey, that kind of leads to the last thought I had. It was like that article about Jeff Bezos and those, right? Yeah. But according to that article, according to this idea, maybe they haven't made it, right? So you think, hey, look, you're effectively on Forbes 400, you're on top of the world. What's missing, right? And I think this is really interesting to see that this is like the new thing, right? To be healthy, to live longer, to like look the part, right? Mm-hmm. To look Instagram fit, right? Is like a big deal. And, Elon Musk getting quote unquote shamed, that was kind of fascinating too, right? But
that was sad. I don't know. I wasn't about that.
No, I get it. I was surprised, right? And I thought, making 3 companies and working 100-hour weeks, right, would get you some protection from that. But I guess everyone's kind of just held to a higher standard now.
Oh my God, yeah. Unreal standards. Let's celebrate being healthy, right? Like, let's celebrate wanting to better yourselves physically and mentally. However, you don't have to have abs to be healthy or even to be fit. Like, you can be perfectly fine and not have abs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because I think everyone has, I guess, a quote unquote journey that they want to go on. Mm-hmm. And everyone has like a missing piece. Everyone has a missing piece, right? And no matter where you go, like you were talking about that last point about that journey, like no matter where you go, like even if you get to your destination, which is like, hey, like in 10 years, I want to be at X station of my life, right? Even when we get to that station, there's going to be something else, right? And so I think really it's, yes, okay, like let's stop objectivizing everyone. But at the same time, I think it's like embracing the journey. We should all think about like embracing the journey, right? In the station, in the hustle, as opposed to the result, right? And I think what's really interesting about that article to me is that, these people just like inherently just want to show off a little bit, right? Everyone wants to show off. And it's like, it's ubiquitous. And there's nothing wrong with it, I guess. Like vanity is not, a bad thing in itself, right? Getting in the best shape of your life may make you live longer and reduce your likelihood of cardiac and stroke and dementia and heart disease. Mm-hmm. At the same time, maybe you don't need to kind of post all over social media, right? Do it for yourself, have a good why. But, that's just like my view on it. But I think, it was very fascinating just kind of looking through just the fact that testing's ubiquitous, right? The fact that you don't just have to get on stimulants and so forth. And, when you make it to the top, maybe you haven't made it to the top. When you're on the Forbes 400 or World Register Span or successful in the career world, maybe there are some other mountains left to climb. That was like my big takeaway.
And also like what you were saying with that missing link, it's like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for someone who's working on survival, they are just trying to get those bottom needs met. Like they're going to spend all their time trying to capture that. But for someone like Elon Musk, who has infinite amounts of money and able to secure those physiological needs, they're able to kind of move up that pyramid without sacrificing anything else. And so in a way, we have to look at people's status and not just compare someone with nothing to someone with everything, right? Because the amount of time that these two groups have is completely different, right?
Yeah, and the resources and their personal preferences, likes, differences, right? And even their health too, right? Maybe they have predispositions to diabetes or something, but everyone's going through some sort of journey and struggle, and I think we all have to maybe embrace it, right?